Welcome to my virtual tour of the Pollinator Paradise Garden at Chatham Mills in Pittsboro. I thought this would be a great way to share what's happening at the garden during the month of August and show you some of my favorite plants and pollinators. The Pollinator Paradise Garden is a project of the Chatham County Center of North Carolina Cooperative Extension. This demonstration garden is designed to showcase pollinator habitat for the Piedmont of North Carolina. My name is Debbie Roos, and I'm an agriculture agent with the Chatham County Center of North Carolina Cooperative Extension. I created the Pollinator Paradise Garden back in 2008, and it's grown to include over 220 unique species of plants, 85% of them native to North Carolina. I manage the garden organically with a small group of volunteers. I'd love to kick off the virtual tour by showing you one of my favorite shrubs, buttonbush, Cephalanthus occidentalis. I love it because it's very adaptable. It doesn't get any supplemental irrigation in the garden, and it still does great, and it has a very long bloom period. This shrub started blooming in early June and is still going strong. Another reason that I'm so crazy about buttonbush is because it attracts such a diversity of pollinators. Everything from butterflies, bees, wasps, and beetles. All kinds of critters are attracted to it. This is actually a black form female of a tiger swallowtail butterfly. The beautiful white flowers of buttonbush resemble pincushions, and they're wonderfully fragrant. They also attract hummingbirds for the nectar and later seed-eating birds. The scarlet rose mallow, Hibiscus coccineus, has been blooming since late June. These beautiful, showy flowers attract hummingbirds and butterflies and bees. And this is another plant, like the buttonbush, that loves moist soil but seems to do just fine in the pollinator garden without supplemental irrigation. Velvet mallow, Hibiscus grandiflorus, is a cousin to the scarlet rose mallow. It has similar sized flowers but in a light pink shade, and as the name indicates, very velvety, soft leaves. We've seen a lot of butterfly and caterpillar activity in the garden during the month of August. This is a black swallowtail caterpillar feeding on a bronze fennel stem. This black swallowtail caterpillar has left the host plant it was feeding on and is now on an aster plant hanging in this J shape while it prepares to form a chrysalis. The day after I spotted the caterpillar in the J formation, I went back and discovered this beautiful chrysalis that had formed. Once I spot the caterpillar or the chrysalis, I'll often keep checking in every few days to see the progress it's made. A day or two after spotting the chrysalis, I checked in on it again and unfortunately discovered that it was being attacked by fire ants. Fire ants are omnivores, and they'll eat anything from plant material to insects to small animals. I watched as they destroyed this chrysalis, picked it apart, and took it back to the nest. It was definitely a bummer to see these ants attacking this chrysalis that I had been watching, but the fact is only a tiny fraction of the eggs laid by butterflies ever reach the adult butterfly stage. All stages of the butterfly's life cycle are vulnerable, from egg to caterpillar, chrysalis to adult. I'm not really sure what this lady beetle was doing on this chrysalis, but she seemed to be nibbling on it. I don't know if she could do any significant damage. Lady beetles are predators and they eat insects, but I had definitely never seen one nibble on a chrysalis. And this is something else I'd never seen. This is a stink bug that's feeding on a chrysalis. At first I thought it was a predatory stink bug, which would make sense because they eat insects, but turns out it's actually a brown stink bug, which is actually a plant-feeding stink bug. And it has a very thin beak, much thinner than the predatory stink bug. I mentioned earlier that butterflies are vulnerable to predators at each stage of their life cycle. This paper wasp has captured a black swallowtail caterpillar and is tearing it apart to bring back to the nest to feed to its larvae. Okay, so maybe we'll move on to some happier scenes here, like this goldfinch gleefully extracting the seeds of this purple coneflower. The native spurred butterfly pea vine, Centrosema virginianum, has been putting on quite the show since late June. Here it is next to spotted bee balm. The bumblebees just go gaga over the spurred butterfly pea. The rattlesnake master, Eryngium yucifolium, is still going strong all the way through the month of August. The brown-eyed Susan, Rudbeckia triloba, looks great paired with the obedient plant, Physostegia virginiana. One of my favorite combinations is the purple passionflower vine, Passiflora incarnata, with the obedient plant. Carpenter bees are the primary pollinators of purple passionflower. They're large enough so that when they go to sip nectar, they scrape their thorax under the anthers and get them covered in pollen. And often when they're exiting the bloom, they brush by the stigma hanging over the anthers, depositing pollen, which results in fertilization. Can you spot the hummingbird in this photo? I love obedient plant, Physostegia virginiana, because it has a long bloom period and attracts not only hummingbirds, but butterflies and bees. It does spread pretty aggressively, but the great news is it's really easy to pull out if it goes where you don't want it to go. By late August, we're starting to get a little hint of fall in some of the beds. This mountain mint, Pycnanthemum lumicii, is paired with early goldenrod, Solidago junkia, which started blooming in August. Wasps like this paper wasp are very attracted to goldenrod for its nectar and pollen. Groundnut, Apios americana, is a native perennial vine that has a beautiful bloom and edible fruits and tubers. The native field thistle, Cirsium discolor, is finally starting to wind down its bloom period by the end of August after almost 3 months of blooming. And of course, late summer into fall is when you start seeing the beautiful big Argiope writing spiders. The yellow passionflower, Passiflora lutea, is at peak bloom in August. This predatory jagged ambush bug nymph is hanging out on the bloom of ironweed, Fernania noviboracensis, waiting for its dinner. I always enjoy watching the bumblebees on the threadleaf ironweed, Fernania lettermanii. This male monarch butterfly is nectaring on jopah weed, Eutrochium dubium. One of the outer parking lot island beds is kind of in the transition from summer to fall. I was so happy to discover lots of monarch caterpillars in late August in the garden. I had been seeing them all season, but we kind of had a little break during the summer where I didn't see a lot. And I have to confess that I could just watch them chew all day. I just find their methodical munching so soothing and relaxing. I don't know why. It's always fun to discover the monarch chrysalids in the garden. It's like going on an Easter egg hunt. Sometimes they pupate on the milkweed host plant, but as often as not, they travel to a neighboring plant like this split-beard bluestem grass. The stout leaves of common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, apparently make a nice perch for the Carolina anole as it searches for prey. This green lynx spider stayed on the same milkweed plant for a couple of months and only left it when the leaves finally turned yellow and dropped off. Their robber flies were super abundant in August, and I always enjoy observing them. Notice how this one is missing the lower portion of its right foreleg. I sure would like to know that story. In the battle of two predators that I admire, the green lynx spider and the robber fly, the green lynx spider wins. I actually saw this twice within a span of about a week. I know robber flies like to perch on leaves, and apparently they're not seeing these well-camouflaged green lynx spiders until it's too late. This American lady butterfly is nectaring on wild ageratum or mistflower, Conoclinium colistinum. The beautiful golden rain digger wasp is a solitary wasp that hunts grasshoppers and related species to provision its nest. The green-headed coneflower, Rudbeckia laciniata, started blooming in late June, but really seems to peak in August. And as you can see, this green-headed coneflower is beloved by the bumblebees. The eastern horse mint, Monarda punctata, attracts a lot of different pollinators like this great black wasp. You'll also see other insects like this soldier beetle seeking pollen on the Monarda punctata. I don't see a whole lot of them, so it's always exciting to see a red admiral butterfly in the garden, in this case on jopie weed, Eutrochium dubium. I don't put many annuals in the garden, but I'm really glad I include this Mexican flame vine. I love its really vibrant color. It's also known for attracting butterflies like this sleepy orange. I'm able to put a lot of the tall perennials in this long bed by the driveway, and that includes the tall tickseed and the seashore mallow and jopie weed. The seashore mallow, Kosteletskia virginica, blooms in the morning and attracts butterflies and bees and hummingbirds, and it's just gorgeous. I love the color. If you look really closely at the top of the bloom, I think you can see the white crab spider. I think maybe the bee was a little too big for it. I love the soft blue color of the great blue lobelia, Lobelia syphilitica. It attracts hummingbird moths and butterflies and lots of bees. You can tell we're starting to get close to fall when you see the beautiful seed heads of bead balm with the drying grasses and the tall tick seed. The fireworks goldenrod starts blooming in August, and I love seeing the passion flower and fruit on top of it. Thank you for joining me for my virtual garden tour. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget to check out my Pollinator Garden website. You'll find hundreds of photos and videos, bloom list and plant list, and lots of resources to help you with your pollinator gardening efforts. See you next month.